In this series, Design Thinking from BrainSparks.ca, we'll cover ways to bring more creativity, empathy, and innovation into your work. No design background required, no coding, no jargon. It's grounded in real world examples and proven methods. This series breaks down the design thinking process into clear, actionable steps from building empathy and framing the problems correctly to generating ideas, prototyping, and testing. Along the way, we'll get into practical templates, facilitation tools, and insights for applying design thinking across industries, teams, and leadership levels. So, whether you're in business, healthcare, government, education, or tech, this series will equip you to tackle complex challenges with confidence, collaborate more effectively, and create solutions that truly work for people. In this section, we'll cover why design thinking matters. The world is changing fast. We live and work in a world that is changing faster than ever, really. Whether you're leading a team, building a product, serving customers, or simply trying to improve your workplace, you're probably facing challenges that are increasingly complex, fast moving, and human centered. Technology evolves at a breakneck pace. Customer expectations are higher and more personalized. Global crises from climate change to pandemics remind us how interconnected and unpredictable our systems have become. In this environment, traditional approaches to problem solving, those rooted in linear thinking, rigid hierarchies, or purely analytical models, often fall short. They tend to focus on efficiency and control, which are important, but not sufficient when you're dealing with ambiguity, emotion, or the messy realities of human behavior. Take a bank, for example, if they're trying to improve, say, their mobile onboarding process. After months of analyzing data and optimizing flows, customer adoption is still low. It's only when a product manager sits down with the real users and watches them struggle with confusing screens, unclear instructions, and awkward identity verification steps that the root issues become clear. It wasn't a data problem, it was a human problem, and it needed a human centered solution. So, what is design thinking? Design thinking is a practical, repeatable approach to creative problem solving. It puts people, the users, customers, employees, and community members at the center of the process. It helps us understand their needs, generate fresh ideas, test those ideas quickly, and learn what works before investing heavily in implementation. At its core, design thinking combines three essential mindsets: empathy, which is a deep understanding of people's needs and contexts; creativity, which is the ability to imagine new possibilities; and rationality. That just means making sure solutions are viable and feasible. Not about making things pretty, it's about making things work for real people. The process typically unfolds in five stages: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. But don't be fooled by the linear look. Design thinking is a highly iterative and flexible process. You might jump around back and forth from testing to ideation or loop through empathy and definition multiple times before moving forward. Design thinking is less about being a designer and more about thinking like one. Who uses design thinking? Design thinking isn't just for graphic designers or product developers. Today, it's used by professionals across a wide range of industries and roles. Global companies like Apple, Google, IBM, and Airbnb have embedded design thinking into how they innovate. Nonprofits and public sector organizations use it to design services for vulnerable populations. Educators apply it to rethink learning experiences. Healthcare workers use it to improve patient journeys. HR teams use it to redesign hiring and onboarding. If you solve problems that affect people and you want those solutions to stick, design thinking can help. Why it works. Design thinking works because it mirrors how real innovation happens, not in a flash of genius, but through cycles of exploration, learning, and refinement. It helps individuals and teams unlock creativity in a structured way, providing just enough process to support risk taking without stifling it. Because prototypes are built and tested early, teams can fail fast, learn fast before committing major resources or money. This reduces risk, saves times, and increases the chances of people finding a solution that truly fits. Design thinking also breaks down silos. It invites diverse perspectives to the table and encourages collaboration over hierarchy. When done well, it brings people together around a shared understanding of the problem and a co created path to a better outcome. More importantly, it keeps the focus on people, not just products, processes, or profit. Common myths and the truth behind them. As design thinking has grown in popularity, so have a few misconceptions. Let's clear those up. One myth is that it's just a fancy word for brainstorming. The truth is that brainstorming is a small piece of it. Design thinking is a structured end to end process that includes research, synthesis, prototyping, and testing. Another myth is that only designers or creatives use it. And the truth is, design thinking is a mindset and a toolkit for anyone solving complex human centered problems: engineers, managers, nurses, educators, policymakers, and so much more. Another myth: we don't have time for that. The truth is, design thinking can be applied in lightweight, rapid ways. Some teams use it in 1 hour sprints, others use it into long term projects. The process is flexible and scalable. So, through this series, it's kind of your practical companion to learning and applying design thinking in real professional settings. You'll learn how to use repeatable, flexible process to tackle complex problems, whether you're improving a product, reimagining a service, leading a change initiative, or just trying to make your workplace better. We have lots of tools and exercises. And I just want to remind you, so check out our website, BrainSparks.ca. We have tons of free tools and templates. And there's a very massive section just dedicated to design thinking because there's so many templates and workshop tools that can go along with this. So please check it out. And through these, you'll learn how to build empathy and understand the real needs behind surface level issues, frame problems in ways that open up new possibilities, facilitate creative collaboration and generate better ideas, prototype and test quickly to learn what works, embed design thinking into your team, project, and organization. And most importantly, you'll build confidence in your ability to solve problems that matter. In the next few episodes, we'll walk through the entire design thinking process step by step. You'll learn how to conduct meaningful user research, craft powerful how might we questions, facilitate ideation sessions, build and test prototypes, and lead others through this approach. We'll also explore how design thinking applies to remote work, team facilitation, and organizational change. We'll include real world examples, tools you can use right away, and quick reflections to help you connect with the material to your own challenges. You don't need to be a designer. You don't need to be a coder. You don't need to be a project manager. You just need to be curious, open, and willing to experiment. As you listen through the series, think about a challenge in your workplace or life or school that where you feel kind of stuck. It's unclear, the problem's unsolved, and carry that challenge with you. And then as we move through the different episodes, try the tools, try the mindset, and see what happens when you start thinking with a design thinking approach. And as a reflection prompt, to get us started, what is a challenge in your work, life, or school that seems frustrating, ambiguous, or you're stuck on? Take a moment to jot down some notes. Who is affected by this problem? Why hasn't it been solved yet? What have you or others tried already? What assumptions are you making about the problem? So, as we go through, we're going to revisit this question. So, keep your notes handy. Mindset behind design thinking. Beyond process, why mindset matters. Design thinking is more than just a process, it's a way of seeing and approaching the world. While the 5 stage framework offers helpful structure, the true power of design thinking comes from the mindset that drives it. Without the right mindset, tools become mechanical and innovation stalls. With it, even simple techniques can lead to breakthroughs. So now we'll explore the attitudes and habits that make design thinking work, especially in complex real world environments. These aren't just soft skills or nice to haves, they're core enablers of creativity, collaboration, and impact. Most professionals are trained to seek clarity, reduce risk, and act decisively. Yet the problems that demand design thinking rarely present neat answers. They're messy, layered, and often emotionally charged. Embracing ambiguity doesn't mean being indecisive. It means learning to hold space for the unknown long enough to truly understand it. Empathy is what makes that possible. Instead of rushing to a solution, design thinkers pause to see the world through others' eyes. They listen without judgment, ask questions without assumptions, and stay curious longer than is comfortable. This mindset isn't about being overly emotional, it's about grounding innovation in real human experience. Professionals often discover that the more they understand the people affected by the problem, the less confident they feel in their early assumptions. That's a sign you're on the right track. Innovation thrives where learning is valued over being right. In a fixed mindset, mistakes feel like threats. In a growth mindset, they're invitations to improve. The distinction, popularized by psychologist Carol Dweck, is central to design thinking. Design thinkers approach challenges as experiments. They expect ideas to evolve and improve. They accept that failure is not just possible, it's inevitable and instructive. Instead of fearing imperfection, they seek feedback early, iterate often, and treat progress as a continuous journey rather than a linear path. This attitude can be surprisingly liberating. You don't need to know the perfect answer on day one. You just need the courage to take the first step, learn quickly, and keep going. Most workplaces still reward individual expertise and top down decision making. But in design thinking, innovation often comes from unexpected places and unexpected people. That's why the mindset of radical collaboration is so essential. Design thinkers actively seek out diverse perspectives. They build multidisciplinary teams. They treat every voice as valuable, whether it comes from the CEO or the janitor, the junior analyst, or the frontline worker. They know that the best ideas often emerge not from isolated brilliance, but from the friction and fusion of different ways of thinking. This can challenge traditional power dynamics. It asks leaders to facilitate rather than dictate and to create space rather than dominate it. But the payoff is real: better solutions, stronger buy in, and cultures of shared ownership. In traditional environments, failure is something to avoid, hide, or minimize. In design thinking, failure is reframed as a vital source of learning. Not all ideas will work, and that's exactly why prototyping and testing are core parts of the process. Early stage failure is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign that you're learning fast before expensive mistakes are made. This mindset shift transforms how teams operate. Instead of polishing ideas in isolation, they get them out into the real world, they collect feedback, and they adjust with confidence. Of course, embracing failure doesn't mean being careless. It means designing experiments that are small, safe, structured, and can generate insight. The goal isn't to fail for the sake of it, it's to learn what works for real people in the real world. These mindsets, empathy, curiosity, collaboration, resilience, are not innate traits. They're habits that anyone can cultivate. And the more you practice them, the more naturally they shape your approach to problems. In meetings, it might mean listening more and interrupting less. When planning a project, it might mean interviewing users before writing the requirements. As a leader, it might mean inviting your team to co create instead of handing down a plan. These small shifts can transform not just how problems are solved, but how people feel about solving them. Mindsets don't live in isolation. The most successful design thinking efforts happen in environments that support these values. When curiosity is rewarded, when questions are welcome, when teams feel safe to speak up and fail, design thinking thrives. The series focuses on practical tools and techniques, but always remember it's the mindset that brings them to life. You can't prototype your way out of a culture that punishes experimentation. You can't generate bold ideas if people are afraid to look foolish. That's why cultivating a design thinking mindset is just as important as learning the process. Now that you've explored the inner landscape of design thinking, you're ready to dive into the outer structure, the process itself. Next, we'll walk through the 5 stages of design thinking, how they work, and how to use them flexibly in your own context. But first, let's take a moment to reflect on your own mindset. Where do you feel confident? Where might you need to stretch? Remember, design thinking begins with awareness of others, of context, and of yourself. For our reflection prompt, which of these mindsets feels most natural to you and which feels most challenging? Write down a few thoughts. When was the last time you embraced ambiguity in your work? How do you usually respond to feedback or failure? In your team or organization, what's one thing that encourages or blocks collaboration? An overview of the design thinking process from mindset to method. Now that we've explored why design thinking matters and what kind of mindset fuels it, you're ready to get to the heart of the method itself. Design thinking is often described as a 5 stage process, but it's more accurate to think of it as a dynamic, interconnected set of activities that help you understand people, frame meaningful connections, and create better solutions through rapid learning. This episode gives you a high level tour of the process, preparing you for the deep dives in the later episodes. It's not about memorizing steps, it's about understanding how each part of the process contributes to creative, human centered problem solving and how you can flex it to fix your own context. So, the 5 stages of design thinking, and this is a classic model. I think it was initially developed by Stanford, but a lot of organizations have used it, and it's stood the test of time. It's pretty well established. Step one is empathize. Understand the people you're designing for by observing, listening, and immersing yourself in their experiences. You're not just gathering data, you're building emotional and contextual understanding. This is where user interviews, shadowing, and immersion exercises come in. Step two is define. Synthesize what you've already learned to clarify the core problem worth solving. This isn't always the problem you started with. Here, you create a point of view POV statement and reframe challenges using techniques like how might we to create possibilities. So, how might we comes up a lot. It's sometimes called HMW. Step three is ideate. Generate a wide range of possible solutions. This is where you deliberately suspend judgment to encourage divergent thinking. The goal is not to find the answer right away, but to explore unexpected directions and uncover potential breakthroughs. Step four is to prototype. So you want to bring ideas to life quickly and cheaply. This could be a sketch, a whiteboard drawing, role playing, a storyboard, or mock up, whatever helps people experience your idea in a tangible way. Prototyping isn't about building something perfect, it's about learning fast. And step five is to test. Share your prototypes with users and gather feedback. What works? What's unclear? What needs to change? The purpose of testing is not validation, it's learning. Use this feedback to refine, pivot, or even return to earlier stages with new insight. Each stage has its own focus, tools, and techniques, but the real power comes from how they connect and loop back. And it's not linear. That's entirely the point. Unlike traditional project planning models, design thinking is not a straight line from problem to solution. It's like a squiggle of spaghetti. The more flexible you use it, the more you revisit things, the more you remix it, the better your results are going to be. You might start by prototyping ideas and realize you don't understand your users well enough, or maybe your user demographic is going to change. You might define a problem, test a solution, and then return to ideation when things don't quite click. This iterative, nonlinear nature is what makes design thinking so adaptive. It's not about checking boxes, it's about staying responsive to what you learn along the way. Think of it as stages, not steps. You move between them based on insight, not instruction. That said, starting with empathy and ending with testing often provides the strongest foundation, especially for teams new to this approach. Most professional problem solving models prioritize analysis, planning, and execution. You define the problem early, propose a solution, then roll it out. While this can work for some straightforward issues, it struggles when real problems are undefined, emotional, or require behavioral changes. Design thinking flips the script. It delays the rush to solution and prioritizes understanding first. It's less about controlling variables and more about engaging with complexity. It invites you to explore what could be, not just what should be. In short, traditional models often assume the problem is known and the solution can be optimized. Design thinking assumes the problem is evolving and the solution might be discovered. This shift is particularly powerful in areas like service design, digital experience, team dynamics, or social impact, anywhere where people's needs, behaviors, and emotions are central. While the five-stage model is great starting point, many organizations and teams adapt it to suit their needs. You might find a compressed version in a single afternoon works for a particular problem, or you could stretch it over months for a major initiative. You might rename the stages to reflect your culture or integrate it into agile, lean, or strategic planning processes. There's no one right way to do it. It only gives you kind of the the framework, the baseline. So it encourages you to use approaches that are useful, human centered, and generative. Some teams even develop their own variations. There's Double Diamond, which is a framework popularized by the UK Design Council, and it emphasizes divergent and convergent phases. There's a sprint model, which is time boxed, 5-day process popularized by Google Ventures. And there's the 3I model, which is inspiration, ideation, and implementation. And that's used in a lot of projects. Regardless of the version, the spirit remains the same. Understand people deeply, generate possibilities boldly, and learn quickly through doing. Process plus mindset equals impact, and it's worth repeating. This process only works when it's powered by the right mindset. The tools can give you the mindsets, empathy, curiosity, openness, and resilience are what give them life. I'll even say that again. The tools can guide you, but the mindsets, empathy, curiosity, openness, and resilience are what bring them to life. You can run a flawless brainstorming session and still miss the mark if the team isn't willing to challenge assumptions. You can build slick prototypes that solve the problem the wrong way if you haven't listened closely to your users. The process keeps you on track, but the mindset keeps you honest. In the next few episodes, we'll unpack each stage of the design thinking process in detail, starting with empathy. You'll learn practical techniques. We'll give you some real world examples and some more prompts to apply them to your own challenge. For now, think of design thinking as a creative scaffold flexible, iterative, and grounded in real people's experiences. You don't need to master every detail to begin, you just need to start. And to continue on with our reflection prompt, where in your work or organization do people tend to jump to solutions too quickly? Reflect on the following. What might be missed by skipping over empathy or problem definition? When was the last time you revisited a problem with fresh eyes? Stage one is empathize. That's understanding people deeply. Every meaningful solution begins with a meaningful understanding of the people it's meant to serve. That's why empathize is the first and arguably most crucial phase in the design thinking process. In fast-paced workplaces, it's tempting to jump into problem-solving mode with assumptions and secondhand data. But without grounding your work in real human experience, you risk solving the wrong problem or worse, creating solutions that make things harder. Empathy in design isn't just about being nice or emotional, it's about deliberately seeking insight into what people do, think, feel, and value. It's about observing behavior, uncovering needs that aren't spoken aloud, and identifying friction points that people have normalized over time. Empathy helps you see beyond the obvious and design with purpose. And you don't want to just ask, you want to observe, listen, and immerse yourself in their experience. Too often, we treat user understanding as a one off survey or customer satisfaction report. But empathy in design thinking is immersive. It involves multiple methods that allow you to understand not just what people say, but what they experience in context. Let's look at three core techniques. The first is observation. Watch users in the environment where the problem occurs. If you're improving a check-in process at a clinic, don't just read policy documents, stand in the lobby, and watch patients arrive. What slows them down? Where do they hesitate? What workarounds do they use? Observational research is powerful because behavior often reveals more than words. People adapt to poor experiences without complaining, but those adaptations tell a story. Second one is listening. Interviews are a core method in empathy phase, but they're different from formal surveys. Your goal isn't to confirm hypotheses, it's to discover something new. That means asking open ended questions, following the user's energy, and being comfortable with silence. Good design thinkers listen with curiosity, not judgment. They dig into why without leading the answer. They look for emotional highs and lows, moments of frustration, delight, or surprise. Sample question starters could be: can you walk me through the last time you did X? What was the most frustrating thing about that experience? If you could wave a magic wand, what would you change? And third part is immersion. Sometimes the most effective way to understand an experience is to live it. If you're designing for frontline staff, spend time shadowing them. If you're rethinking a food service process, go through it yourself. What feels clunky? Where do you feel tension? Where's there uncertainty? Immersion helps build empathy from the inside out. It doesn't replace listening to others, but it makes you more attuned to what they mean. After you've gathered insights from the field, the next step is to organize and make sense of them. Empathy doesn't end with listening, it continues as you reflect, cluster, and share what you've heard. An empathy map is a simple tool to visualize a user's experience. It typically includes four quadrants: says, thinks, does, and feels. Mapping this helps you synthesize multiple user stories into a clear picture. It forces you to distinguish between what's seen and what's assumed, and helps teams quickly grasp key pain points and motivations. Personas are fictional but realistic archetypes built from your research. A good persona captures a user's goals, frustrations, behaviors, and context, not just demographics. They're not about stereotyping, they're about anchoring your design work in the real needs of people who represent your audience. For example, instead of saying a 35-year-old healthcare worker, you could try: Angela, a nurse manager in a rural clinic, often juggles staffing gaps and patient expectations. She's tech savvy but overwhelmed by new systems. She wants tools that save time, not ones that add steps. This level of detail keeps your work grounded as you move into ideation. Empathy work is vulnerable to bias, especially confirmation bias, where we seek data that aligns with what we already believe. To practice ethical, effective empathy, you need to check your assumptions constantly. Here are a few tips to stay honest. Ask a colleague to review your interview questions for neutrality. Include unexpected or edge users in your research, not just the typical ones. Make room for negative feedback or experiences that challenge your solution ideas. A useful practice is to begin interviews with a brief bias check among your team. What do we think we know about this user group? What assumptions are we bringing? Managing your biases explicitly helps prevent them from being silently shaping your process. Empathy is an ongoing commitment. One of the most common mistakes in design thinking is to treat empathy as a box to check at the beginning of a project. But empathy is not a phase, it's a posture. Even as you move into prototyping and testing, you'll continue learning from people. Each idea you test is an opportunity to listen better and design with more clarity. Empathy work is also a ripple outward. When one team in a large organization starts to listen more deeply to others, others notice. When employees feel heard, trust increases. When customers see their needs reflected in a product or service, loyalty follows. These effects don't come from one time research, they come from building empathy into the way you work. So now you have a foundation for gathering rich, meaningful insights about the people you serve. Next, we'll focus on learning how to turn that raw material into clear, actionable definition of the problem. Because once you've understood people deeply, the question becomes, what exactly are we trying to solve? For this next piece in the reflection prompt journey, whose experience do you need to understand better before jumping to solutions? Make a few notes. A person or group affected by the challenge you're working on. One method you'll use, observation, listening, immersion. One assumption you'll need to change. This episode will cover define, where we frame the real problem. In design thinking, there's a quiet but critical shift that happens between empathizing with users and generating ideas. It's the moment you stop simply listening and start making sense of what you heard. That is the moment where define lives. This stage is often underappreciated because it doesn't look flashy. There's no sticky note storm, no prototyping frenzy. Instead, it's about synthesis, carefully reviewing your research, finding patterns, and naming the challenge you're truly trying to solve. Not the one you started with either. It's not the one your boss handed to you. It's the one that actually matters, and it matters to the people you're designing for. Getting this right saves time, energy, and costly rework. Get it wrong, no matter how brilliant your solution is, it may miss the mark entirely. After you've gathered observations, interviews, and impressions in the empathize phase, you're likely sitting on a mountain of raw information. It's valuable but overwhelming. The define stage helps you translate that data into clarity. Here's how it typically unfolds: cluster and theme, extract insights, and reframe the challenge. So, to cluster and theme, lay out your research findings, quotes, moments, photos, behaviors, and look for common threads. What are users consistently frustrated by? What surprises keep showing up? Clustering help reveals latent needs and contradictions that you might otherwise miss. Next is the extract insights. An insight is a new, not obvious understanding that changes how you think about the problem. It often emerges from tension. For example, users say they want more control over their schedule, but they also avoid using customization features in the app. Why is that? And then, of course, reframe the challenge. Once you've identified patterns and insights, you're ready to articulate the core problem, not in technical terms, but from the user's point of view. The point of view, or POV statement, is a short, powerful sentence that defines the user, their need, and the insight that reframes the problem. The formula is simple: user needs X because ABC. And ABC would be the surprising insight. Here's a basic example from a service design project. Alex is a first time patient and needs to feel confident walking into their medical appointment because the check in process is confusing and assumes prior knowledge. What makes this effective is its specificity. It names the real user, not just a vague customer. It connects to an emotional need, which is their confidence, and it calls out a subtle barrier. They assumed knowledge of the system. From the here, you can ideate with sharper focus and more empathy. A POV statement is not just a summary, it's a springboard. It helps you prioritize and frame meaningful how might we questions. Turning problems into possibilities, the how might we technique. One of the most widely used and deceptively simple tools in design thinking is the how might we prompt. It invites creativity by framing the problem as an opportunity rather than a limitation. The format is always how might we, verb or action, for user in order to XYZ impact. And in using our previous example, how might we simplify the check-in experience so first-time patients feel more confident and informed? Good how might we questions strike a balance between broad and narrow. If they're too vague, how can we make healthcare better? They're hard to act on, And if they're too specific, they limit creativity. Try generating multiple how might we questions for the same problem. One might focus on information design, another might focus on environment, third might focus on emotional support. Each gives your team a different lens through which to explore. Zoom out before you zoom in. One of the hardest skills in design thinking is knowing when to reframe the problem entirely. Sometimes the pain point you're addressing is just a symptom of something deeper. A team redesigning an onboarding experience for a tech platform might discover through interviews that the real issue isn't the content, it's the user's sense of overwhelm and imposter syndrome. That insight may lead to them to shift focus from technical instruction to emotional reassurance. Same context, very different challenge. Reframing doesn't mean starting over. It means asking better questions and designing for what matters most. The define phase is your opportunity to do exactly that before you get too attached to any particular solution. And it is tempting to shortcut this phase or skip it altogether because you're eager to move on to ideation. But rushing through the define phase often leads to solution theater, where teams invest heavily in building things that seem elegant but are solving the wrong problem. Think of define as sharpening your lens. Blurry lens still captures something, but it's not with the detail, nuance, and accuracy needed to make real progress. In a fast moving environment, you don't have weeks to get this right, or maybe months. You just need a disciplined pause to reflect on your findings, align on a clear user need, and frame it in a way that opens creative doors. So once you've distilled a clear, actionable problem from your research, you're ready to generate ideas. That's the focus of the next episode, Ideate, where we'll move from insight to possibility through divergent thinking and creative facilitation. But do not skip this stage. Design thinkers know what defining the problem is half the solution. And for our next reflection prompt step, what problem have you been trying to solve that might be the wrong problem entirely? Ask yourself, have I talked to the people affected most? What assumptions am I making about their needs? What would change if I rewrote this challenge as a how might we question? Ideate stage, generating breakthrough ideas from insight to imagination. Once you've empathized with users and clearly defined the real problem, you're ready to make a critical pivot from understanding to creating. This is where the ideate phase begins. It's the moment when a team collectively asks, what are all the ways we could solve this problem? Ideation is about pushing boundaries. It's a structured way to generate a wide range of possibilities, including options that may seem impractical. While it's often associated with brainstorming, ideation is broader and more strategic. It's not about getting to the right answer quickly, it's about exploring beyond the obvious. There's two modes, diverge, then converge. Ideation thrives when teams move deliberately between two complementary thinking modes. Divergent thinking is about expansion. It's free-flowing generation of ideas without judgment. Quantity matters here. Wild ideas are encouraged. You're stretching your creativity and challenging assumptions. Convergent thinking is about refinement. So when you take a step back, evaluate what you've generated, and identify the most promising paths forward. Effective ideation is like breathing. You inhale, diverge to take in a wide range of ideas, and exhale, converge to narrow your focus. Teams that skip divergence often stay too close to their assumptions. Teams that skip convergence often end up overwhelmed by options and stall out. Creating the right conditions for creativity. The biggest barrier to good ideation isn't a lack of talent, it's a lack of safety. People won't share bold ideas if they're worried about being judged, ignored, or dismissed. As a facilitator or participant, your role is to create an environment where psychological safety, openness, and curiosity are the norm. Key conditions to establish are to suspend judgment. Don't critique ideas during the divergence phase. Encourage quantity. Aim for volume before refinement. Build on others' ideas. Use yes and instead of no but. Capture everything. Don't rely on memory. Write it down and document it visibly. Equal airtime. Draw out quieter voices and keep dominant ones in check. In practice, this means starting with clear instructions, setting time limits, using visual tools, and warming up with a creative exercise to loosen up the group. Techniques to generate ideas. While many people associate ideation with open brainstorming, it often helps to structure the session around specific techniques that prompt different kinds of thinking. Here are a few favorites used by innovation teams and facilitators around the world. Crazy Eights is a time box sketching exercise where each participant folds a sheet of paper into 8 panels and sketches 8 ideas in 8 minutes, one per panel. It forces participants to go beyond their first idea and unlock lateral thinking. This is especially helpful for visualizing experiences or interfaces. The next one to try is Scamper. This acronym helps you reimagine existing solutions. Substitute, what can we replace? Combine, what if we merged two ideas? Adapt, what can we borrow from another industry? Modify, how can we change the scale or function? Put into another use, can this be repurposed? Eliminate, what can we remove? Rearrange, can we change the order or structure? Scamper is especially useful when redesigning or iterating on existing products, systems, or services. The next one is role storming. Instead of generating ideas as yourself, you take on a persona, say John Doe, Steve Smith, or some other fake name, Big Bird. And you could say, I'm a frustrated manager, and you want to generate ideas from their point of view. This helps sidestep self-censorship and bring empathy back to the ideation space. Another option is called the worst idea. This is a humorous but effective approach where the group intentionally generates terrible ideas. This lowers pressure, removes perfectionism, and often sparks sideways thinking that leads to surprisingly good solutions. Facilitation tips for team ideation sessions. When running an ideation session, whether it's in person or online or hybrid, it requires thoughtful planning. It's not just about the method, it's about the flow, timing, and team energy. So to increase success, consider the following points. Warm up with a creativity game to shake off workplace formality. Frame the session with the how might we question you developed in the define phase. Limit idea pitching. Not every idea needs to be explained in detail. Rapid fire listing keeps momentum high. Use visible space, so like whiteboards, sticky notes, online collaboration boards like Miro, and time box each activity. Creativity benefits from constraints. And with quick clustering and voting exercises. Ask what is feasible, what's bold, what aligns best with user needs. Even in remote or hybrid or in-person settings, you can adapt these methods and incorporate digital tools. What matters most is the energy, inclusion, and clarity of purpose in the session. So what makes an idea good? A good idea in design thinking isn't necessarily the most polished or obvious. It's one that addresses the user need uncovered in earlier stages. It feels innovative or fresh, even in a small way. It can be tested or prototyped quickly. It sparks excitement or emotional resonance in your team or users. Ideation is not about consensus, it's about surfacing strong contenders you can explore further. You're not picking the final solution, you're picking the ones worth exploring in the next phase. So looking ahead, we're going to see the best way to test if an idea has potential and to bring it to life. A prototype, that's the MVP, it's a wireframe, it's your sketch. And then we'll move from possibility to practicality, creating tangible representations of your top ideas and putting them in front of real users. But don't rush ahead, give yourself time to explore, because sometimes the best ideas don't arrive first, they arrive after you've cleared room for them. And for the next phase of our reflection prompt, what is the boldest or weirdest idea you've ever held back from sharing at work? And why didn't you say it? Take some notes. What conditions would have made it safer to share? What might encourage you to be more creative as a risk taker in your teams? The next phase is prototype, bringing our ideas to life. Ideas are cheap, prototypes make them real. A whiteboard full of sticky notes may feel productive, but ideas alone don't solve problems. Until something is made tangible, something that people can see, touch, try, or react to, you're still operating in the realm of assumptions. This is where prototyping comes in. Prototyping is about building to think. It's not about perfecting a final product, it's about learning fast, reducing risk, and creating a conversation around something real. Whether you're working on a digital tool, a service workflow, a physical product, or a policy experience, prototyping allows you to test your thinking without overinvesting. In the design thinking process, prototyping acts as the critical bridge between creativity and usability. Allows you to explore an idea's potential and its flaws before any major commitments are made. So what is a prototype? Prototype is any representation of an idea that allows you to explore it, share it, or test it. It doesn't need to be functional. It doesn't need to be pretty. just needs to communicate the core of your concept well enough that someone else can understand and respond to it. Prototypes can take many forms. It could be a paper sketch of a new app interface, a storyboard showing how a service unfolds over time, a 3D printed model of a product, a role play script for a customer interaction, a clickable wireframe using a no-code tool, a mock policy document or signage for improved process. I've seen them made with Lego, marshmallows, and sticks. Be creative. The fidelity of the prototype should match your goal. Early on, low fidelity works best. It's fast, cheap, and flexible, exactly what you need when you're still exploring. As you refine your ideas, prototypes can evolve to become more detailed or functional. The purpose is to learn, not launch. A common mistake teams make is treating prototyping as a mini build phase. They try to make it something polished or functional, often because they want to impress stakeholders or make it look real. But in design thinking, the goal of a prototype is not to validate an idea, but to test its assumptions. What do users understand intuitively? What surprises them? Where do they hesitate? You're looking for honest reactions, not approval. In this way, prototyping becomes a tool for rapid learning. It creates opportunities to uncover usability or comprehension issues, spark new ideas through feedback, surface emotional reactions, whether they're positive or negative, and expose logistical or ethical concerns early. Even a rough sketch can trigger insights that save weeks of development down the road. Build just enough to learn. So, how do you know what kind of prototype to build? Ask yourself, what is the riskiest part of this idea? And that is what you build. If you're unsure whether users understand the value proposition, prototype the messaging. If you don't know if a new process feels intuitive, walk through it the whole through role play. If you're testing a digital interface, create a paper version with sticky notes and move them around as users click. This is known as selective prototyping, focusing only on the aspects that matter most to your learning goals. It keeps the effort lean and focused. Prototyping services and systems. Design thinking often extends beyond physical products into services, experience, and even policies. These can absolutely be prototyped. You just need to shift how you think about the building part. There are a few tools available for prototyping intangibles. You can use storyboards to illustrate end-to-end service journeys. You can use experience maps to explore emotional highs and lows over time. You can use scripted interactions where team members act out the service. You can use mock environments like a pop-up check-in station or welcome area. You can use paper forms, signage, or info materials to simulate administrative touchpoints. The key is to create something real enough to react to, even if it's incomplete or temporary. Invite feedback, not evaluation. Once you have a prototype, the next step is to put it in front of people. But don't pitch it, test it. Let users experience it naturally and observe what happens. Encourage honest reactions, ask open-ended questions like what stood out to you? Where did you get stuck? What did you think of this so far? How might this be better for someone like you? Don't ask if they like it. That's not the point. Your role is not to defend your idea, it's to learn how people interact with it. And silence or confusion is data. So is laughter, frustration, or excitement. Listen and watch. Prototype culture is a shift in mindset. Organizations that adopt a prototyping mindset don't just innovate faster, they make better decisions. Why? Because they stop relying on guesses, internal debates, and overpolished decks. They test assumptions early and make learning visible. This approach also transforms team dynamics. It invites experimentation, it normalizes failure, it makes work feel collaborative and alive. Here's how to tell if a team has a prototyping mindset. Ideas are shared in rough form, not just as polished plans. Mistakes are expected and welcomed early. Feedback is part of the rhythm, not a final checkpoint. And leadership asks, what did we learn before what did we build? This isn't about product development. It applies to HR teams prototyping new onboarding, policy teams testing new communications, or hospital units simulating a new shift handoff process. Everyone can prototype. So coming up next, once you've created and designed a tested a prototype, it's time to make sense of what you learned. Next, we'll discover how to gather meaningful feedback, avoid defensiveness, and iterate quickly based on the real user reactions that you got. Grab a pen, paper, prop, or script, and build something that you can show someone tomorrow. Because in design thinking, the sooner you build something, the sooner you learn. And for our next reflection prompt, what is something you've been waiting to finish before showing anyone? Could you prototype it now? Prepare to share what's the fastest way to express the core idea. Who could you share it with for a quick reaction? The test phase, learning feedback, moment of truth. You've done the work, understood your users, defined a clear problem, explored a range of ideas, and built something tangible. Now comes the moment that separates assumption from reality, testing. The test phase isn't about validating what you've built, it's about learning from how people experience it. Too often, teams treat testing like a pitch, hoping for applause and approval. But design thinking reframes testing as something else entirely. It's a structured learning opportunity. This episode will guide you through how to design thoughtful user tests, listen without defending, and use insights to strengthen, not defend your ideas. What testing is and isn't. Testing in design thinking isn't Q&A, final review, or user acceptance testing. It's not about catching bugs or confirming specs. Instead, it's about putting early stage ideas in front of users to learn what resonates, what confuses, and what falls flat. It's a chance to answer questions like, do people understand what this is for? How does it make them feel? What assumptions have we made that need to be challenged? What's missing or unclear? Testing doesn't have to be a formal experience or expensive. You don't need a usability lab or a 30-page script. What you do need is curiosity, a clear learning goal, and a willingness to let go of your favorite ideas if the data says they're not working. Testing equals creating conversations. When we say test with users, what we really mean is put the prototype in someone's hands and watch and listen. Let them interact with it naturally. Don't explain or lead them. Don't interrupt their process. Your goal is to observe their instinctive reactions. Here's how to approach a test. 1, set a learning goal. What do you want to find out? Prioritize a few key questions. Number 2, invite the right people. Test with users who match your target audience or people who will be impacted by the solution. 3, introduce the prototype lightly. This isn't an early idea we're exploring. We'd love your honest thoughts or feedback. Nothing is final. Number 4, let them lead. Ask them to narrate their thoughts as they interact. Say, tell me what you're thinking as you go. Number 5, resist the urge to explain. Confusion is data. Let it play out. You're not asking people to review your work, you're asking them to experience it and share what's confusing, helpful, surprising, or off putting. That's where the gold is. Listen without defending. One of the hardest parts of the testing phase is receiving feedback without explaining it away. We naturally want to defend our decisions, especially if we've worked hard on the prototype. But in testing, defensiveness is the enemy of insight. If someone is confused, your job isn't to correct them, it's to understand why. If they don't like something, explore what expectation it violated. When feedback is valued, it gives you kind of a sign like, let's dig deeper here. What would make it better? What's missing? Use open ended neutral prompts. What was going through your mind at that moment? What would you expect to happen next? If you could change one thing about this, what would it be? The best test facilitators say very little. They create space for the user to speak freely, then reflect, they document, and synthesize later. Making sense of the feedback. After testing, your team should regroup to debrief. Not all feedback is equally useful, but every session adds to your picture. Look for patterns across users, repeated confusion, consistent praise, common objections, outliers that spark curiosity, such as surprising use cases or interpretations, and tensions between what users say and what they do. Synthesize your findings into actionable insights. Not people didn't like the button, but users didn't realize the call to action was interactive because it looked like the text body. That's a design problem you can solve. Then decide how to respond. Some ideas will get better with tweaks, others may need to be retired. The point isn't to fix everything immediately, it's to learn what to refine, what to pivot, and what to explore next. Iteration is a discipline. Testing and prototyping go hand in hand. You test to learn, you prototype again based on what you learned, then you test again. Each loop brings you closer to something that truly fits your users' needs and expectations. The cycle doesn't need to be long. In fact, many of the best design teams use rapid iteration, building, and testing small changes in a matter of hours or days, not weeks. This kind of responsiveness builds momentum and engagement. Importantly, this approach also de-risks innovation. By learning early and often, you avoid the trap of overinvesting in untested ideas. You shift from guessing to knowing. Testing in different contexts. Testing looks different depending on what you're designing. For digital products, clickable prototypes, A/B tests, and usability sessions are common. For services, simulations, role plays, or mock customer journeys can reveal pain points. For internal processes or policies, small pilots or shadowing can show people how to engage or resist new approaches. In all cases, testing is the most effective when it's early. Don't wait until everything is polished. It's lightweight, it focuses on the core interactions or touch points, and it's iterative. One test isn't enough. Keep learning. Building a feedback culture. Organizations that embrace testing create a culture of curiosity, humility, and responsiveness. People stop fearing feedback. They start seeking it. Ideas become shared experiments, not personal projects. In these environments, leaders don't just ask, what are we building? They ask, what did we learn this week? The shift transforms how decisions get made and how innovation gets done. Looking ahead. So you now completed a full cycle of the design thinking process, from empathy to ideation, prototyping to testing. But design thinking isn't a one-time sequence. It's a flexible, repeatable approach that you can use in all kinds of contexts. In the next episode, we'll explore how to apply design thinking inside real workplaces in teams, organizations, services, and systems. And you'll see how these tools go beyond projects and become part of how you work and lead. For the next phase in our reflection prompt, when was the last time you truly learned from someone else's reaction to your idea without correcting them? Consider what made that feedback session effective or difficult. How can you create more space for learning in your next project? Design thinking in business contexts, from creative process to strategic advantage. By now, you've explored the core stages of design thinking: empathy, problem framing, idea generation, prototyping, and testing. But design thinking isn't just a project tool or creativity exercise. When applied thoughtfully, it becomes a strategic enabler that helps organizations solve complex problems, drive innovation, and stay relevant in changing markets. In this episode, we move beyond the individual toolkit to explore how design thinking adds value in real world business contexts, from product development to customer experience, from strategy to internal transformation. You'll see how human centered thinking isn't just about soft skills, it's a way to tackle some of the hardest, messiest challenges modern organizations face. Innovation and product development. Traditionally, product development followed a linear top down path: define a business case, build a solution, release it, and hope for adoption. But in rapidly shifting markets, this model breaks down. Customer expectations evolve faster than internal roadmaps. Competitors emerge from unexpected sectors, and almost overnight, teams need to move faster and smarter. This is where design thinking excels. Instead of guessing what customers want, design led product teams co create with them. They use interviews, observations, and journey mapping to understand not just what people do, but why they do it. They generate multiple ideas, prototype quickly, and test iteratively before committing to build. The result: products that are relevant, usable, and differentiated. Take Intuit, for example. The financial software company restructured its innovation process around customer empathy and rapid experimentation. Small cross-functional teams now identify real customer pain points, run dozens of small experiments, and only scale ideas that show traction. Design thinking didn't replace business strategy. It enhanced it by putting users at the center of every decision. Customer experience and service design. In service industries, experiences matter as much as the outcomes. Healthcare appointment, a bank transaction, a travel check-in, each is more than a process. It's a human interaction. Yet many organizations still design services from the inside out, optimizing systems for efficiency rather than user experience. Design thinking flips the lens. It asks, what does the customer journey really feel like? What are the friction points? What emotions are triggered? Delight, frustration, trust, confusion? Service designers use tools like experience mapping, persona development, and live simulation to explore these questions. They engage frontline staff and end users alike in redesigning processes that are not only smoother but more human. Government agencies have also embraced this shift. UK government digital service, for example, applies design thinking to simplify public-facing services, ensuring they are accessible, understandable, and usable by everyone, not just tech-savvy citizens. Organizational change and internal strategy. Design thinking isn't just for customer-facing innovation. It also offers a powerful approach to solving internal challenges, especially those involving culture, communication, and change. Think about onboarding new employees, or redesigning a performance review process, or aligning teams around a new strategic vision. These initiatives fail not because the intentions are wrong, but because they're built around assumptions about what people really need or how they behave. By applying design thinking internally, leaders can engage employees as co creators rather than passive recipients. Instead of launching change from the top, they can prototype new ways of working and gather feedback before scaling. Design led change management focuses on engagement, not enforcement. It relies on storytelling, participation, and empathy to build momentum from the ground up. It not only leads to better solution, it builds trust and ownership. Strategic thinking with a human lens. At its core, strategy is about making choices, where to play, how to win, and how to allocate resources. But traditional strategy often happens in boardrooms based on abstract analysis without enough connection to lived customer or employee experience. Design thinking brings real world insight into strategic conversations. It surfaces what customers actually value. It reveals unmet needs that competitors are ignoring. It helps leaders understand what their own people are struggling with and what motivates them. Design thinking doesn't replace frameworks like SWOT or Porter's five forces. Instead, it enriches them with qualitative insight. It turns strategic thought into something dynamic, grounded in evidence from the field. In uncertain environments, that's a serious advantage. What makes it stick? For design thinking to make a real impact in business, it can't just be a workshop or a one off project. It needs to become a way of working embedded in how teams plan, decide, and learn. Here are 4 success factors. Executive sponsorship. Leaders don't need to run design sessions, but they do need to model curiosity, openness, and a willingness to experiment. When leaders ask, what did we learn from users? It sets the tone for everyone else. 2 is cross-functional teams. Diverse teams speak and spark better ideas. Design thinking thrives when marketing, operations, tech, and frontline roles come together to co-create. 3 is a safe to fail culture. Organizations that learn fast win. That only happens when people can test early, fail safely, and share learning openly. Mistakes become signals, not setbacks. And 4 is ongoing practice, not perfection. Design thinking is a muscle. It gets stronger with repetition, it gets better with practice. Teams that treat it as a continuous habit, not a polished process, see the most meaningful results. Design thinking has evolved far beyond notes in stickies and innovation labs. It's helping real organizations tackle real problems with creativity, empathy, and speed. Next, we'll learn how to facilitate design thinking in teams, whether you're leading a sprint, coaching a group through a new challenge, or bringing design tools into a strategy session. Because knowing how to use the tools is one thing, and knowing how to guide others through them is where the real impact begins. And for the next reflection prompt, where in your organization are decisions made without real user insight? Think about how you can influence change. How might design thinking help bridge that gap? What business challenge could benefit from a human-centered approach? Facilitating design thinking in teams, the shift from doer to enabler. Learning how to apply design thinking on your own is valuable, but learning to lead others through it, that's where the impact multiplies. Facilitation is what turns design thinking from a personal skill into a collective capability. It's what helps teams collaborate effectively, move through ambiguity, and generate solutions together. The facilitator isn't necessarily the subject matter expert, the loudest voice, or the most senior person in the room. They are the guide who creates space for creative thinking, structured progress, and real participation. In this episode, we'll explore what it takes to facilitate design thinking well, the mindsets, techniques, and common pitfalls. Whether you're leading a workshop, managing a cross functional project, or introducing design thinking in your organization for the first time, facilitation is what brings it to life. What facilitation is and is not. As a design thinking facilitator, you don't drive to a solution. You create conditions for others to discover it. They are part coach, part conductor, and part neutral process leader. The role involves framing the challenge clearly, guiding the team through each design phase, choosing and adapting the right tools, managing time, energy, and group dynamics, encouraging equal participation, making learning visible as it emerges. It's important to note facilitators don't need to have the answers. In fact, trying to steer the team toward a preferred solution can undermine the whole process. Your job is not to lead the content, it's to lead the process and protect the quality of the collaboration. For the session, set up for success. Great facilitation begins before the first marker hits a whiteboard. Thoughtful design thinking session, whether it's a 90-minute brainstorm or a full day sprint, requires clear preparation. Key things to define ahead of time include what's the objective? What will success look like for this session? Is it alignment, idea generation, insight discovery? Who should be there? Aim for diversity in roles, perspectives, and experience levels. Avoid only the usual suspects. What's the right level of fidelity? Are you working with a vague problem or a defined opportunity? That shapes how you define the experience and design it. What tools and materials do you need? Consider analog and digital options. So whiteboards, sticky notes, Miro, Figma, especially for remote teams. Even the physical or digital environment matters. Is it conducive to collaboration? Can people see each other? Is it easy to move ideas around? These small logistics shape the overall energy and flow. During the session, guide the flow, hold the space. Once the session begins, your job is to set the tone and keep things moving while making space for reflection, curiosity, and emergence. Here are some facilitation principles that matter most. One, establish psychological safety early. Let people know this is a space for exploration, not performance. Set ground rules like suspend judgment, build in ideas, focus on the user, be open to surprise. A brief warm up activity, creative, playful, or reflective, can help people let go of formality and lean into the process. Two, use time boxing to drive momentum. Each phase of design thinking benefits from structure. Use short, focused blocks, like 10 to 30 minutes, to guide ideation, synthesis, or feedback. Deadlines create urgency and help people commit without overthinking. Time boxing doesn't restrict creativity, it liberates it from perfectionism. Three, vary your tools and modalities. Use a mix of methods to engage different types of thinkers. Visual, using sketching or diagrams; verbal, brainwriting, lightning talks; physical, with role plays or prototypes; reflective, using journaling or personal POV exercises. A well-facilitated session cycles through multiple modes, keeping energy fresh. Four, balance divergence and convergence. Know when to open up space for idea generation and when to help the group focus. After divergent activities, use methods like dot voting, affinity mapping, or prioritization grids to help teams decide where to go deeper. Your role is to help them navigate ambiguity without getting stuck in it. There are some common navigation challenges. Facilitation isn't always smooth. Here are a few challenges and strategies to manage them. If one person is dominating the discussion, redirect them gently. Let's hear from someone we haven't heard from yet. If the group jumps to solutions too soon, regroup in user needs or POV statements. Ask, what are we solving for? If there's energy dips or fatigue sets in, take a movement break, run a lightning round, or shift formats. Participants are skeptical of the process. Acknowledge it and invite them to be curious and test their own assumptions. Don't convert, just model the value of exploration. If there's too many ideas and no direction, facilitate prioritization exercises. Ask, which of these ideas has the most potential for impact and feasibility? Great facilitators don't eliminate tension, they work with it. They channel it toward creative output and learning. Co-facilitation and distributed leadership. You don't have to facilitate alone. In fact, many of the best sessions are led by co-facilitators, two or more people who share the load of guiding, capturing, and observing. Co-facilitation allows one person to lead the room while the other monitors groups dynamics, captures insights, supports breakout groups. It's especially useful for hybrid or virtual settings where attention is split between multiple tools or interfaces. Even in teams without formal facilitators, it's powerful to distribute facilitation skills. Teach others how to lead parts of the process. Over time, design thinking becomes less dependent on any one champion and more embedded in team culture. Closing a session, land the learning. Every design thinking session should end with reflection, not just what was produced, but what was learned. Try ending with a brief round of what surprised you today, a group check-in on next steps and ownership, a snapshot summary of key themes, decisions, or ideas, a moment of appreciation for contributions and risks taken. The session may be over, but the mindset continues. Facilitation is a skill that deepens with practice. The more you lead others through ambiguity, the more comfortable you become navigating it yourself. You start to see your role not just as a problem solver, but as a possibility maker, someone who helps think differently. In the next episode, we'll explore how to adapt to design thinking for remote and hybrid teams and ensure energy, creativity, and humanity survive in the virtual space. For this next reflection prompt, think about a meeting or project you've led recently. Did you facilitate or just manage? Reflect on what could have made participation more active or inclusive. How might you shift from directing outcomes to guiding the process? Remote and hybrid design thinking. Design thinking thrives on energy, sticky notes on walls, spirited ideation, spontaneous whiteboard sketches, and hallway conversations that spark unexpected insights. So, what happens when your team is spread across time zones, collaborating through screens instead of shared space? Far from diminishing the power of design thinking, remote and hybrid work environments have actually helped reveal its true strength: adaptability. When approached thoughtfully, design thinking translates surprisingly well to virtual spaces, and in some ways opens new opportunities for inclusion, participation, and creativity. This series will explore how to effectively run design thinking activities in remote or hybrid formats, whether your team is fully distributed, occasionally in person, or navigating the complexities of a hybrid workplace. Rethinking the medium, not the mindset. What changes when you move design thinking online isn't the core philosophy, it's the medium. The need for empathy, creativity, iteration, and collaboration remains, but the tools, timing, and facilitation style must evolve to meet the realities of screen based work. Here's what shifts in a remote or hybrid setting. You can't rely on body language to read the room. People tire more quickly in virtual meetings. Participation must be deliberately designed, and it's not automatic. And tools become even more central to the process. What doesn't change? The need for clarity, pacing, and purposeful structure, the value of diverse perspectives, the emotional dynamics of group creativity, and the importance of psychological safety. By recognizing the differences and designing intentionally for them, you can turn the constraints of remote work into creative strengths. Digital collaboration tools, your new workshop. A successful remote design thinking session requires more than a video call. It requires a digital workspace where ideas can flow visually, asynchronously, and in real time. Some widely used tools include Miro or Mural. They're virtual whiteboards, ideal for ideation, clustering, mapping, and prototyping. BigJam, which is a design-friendly tool great for collaborative sketching. Google Workspace for shared docs, slides, and live note-taking. Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or Butter for video facilitation, breakout rooms, and polls. Key is to choose your tools so your team can adapt and have not too much complexity. Start with what's familiar, then layer in new platforms gradually. Don't assume everyone is equally comfortable with the digital tools. Build in 5 to 10 minutes at the start of sessions to orient people to the board or app that you're using. Think of it as a virtual version of where the markers are. Adapting each phase for remote use. Let's break down each stage of design thinking and how to run it effectively online. First one, Empathize, is where we do remote interviews via video calls because they can feel surprisingly intimate, especially one on one. People often open up more from the comfort of their own space. Use tools like Otter or Descript to transcribe conversations for easier synthesis. Encourage team members to share empathy maps or insights asynchronously using shared templates. For define, use virtual whiteboards to cluster insights, create personas, and write POV statements. Have each participant generate how might we questions independently and synthesize together. If working asynchronously, use color-coded stickies or emojis to react to patterns. Ideate, time-box silent brainstorming in a shared board. Introverts often thrive in these types of conditions. Use dot voting or heat mapping tools to prioritize ideas. Break into smaller virtual groups for creative exercises like Crazy Eights or Scamper, then regroup and share. Prototype, low fidelity mockups can be sketched by hand and uploaded as images, or built with tools like Figma, Canva, or even PowerPoint. For service concepts, write scenario scripts and create storyboards collaboratively. Use Loom or short videos to walk through concepts asynchronously. For test, share prototypes over screen share or send them out ahead of time. Ask users to narrate their experience live or submit video responses. Debrief with the team immediately after user tests to capture fresh insights. The best and worst of both worlds in hybrid collaboration, because like hybrid, some in person, some remote, some bring unique challenges. It's easy for in person participants to dominate or for remote colleagues to feel excluded. But with intention, hybrid formats can be inclusive and dynamic. Key principles are designed for the remote participant first. If it works for them, it works for everyone. Equalize visibility. One shared virtual board that everyone contributes to regardless of location. Assign a co-facilitator to monitor remote participation and elevate voices in the room. And avoid room bias by having everyone join the call on separate devices, even if some are physically together. Hybrid work requires orchestration, but when done right, it allows for flexible collaboration without sacrificing cohesion. Maintaining energy and connection. Remote design thinking isn't just about tools, it's about people. Without hallway banter or shared lunches, connection must be deliberately nurtured. Ways to keep energy high include starting with a check in question or visual icebreaker. Use short, focused sessions with breaks, no more than 90 minutes at a stretch. Celebrate contributions with real time reactions, shout outs, or gifts. Close with reflections. What surprised you today, or what's one thing you're excited to try? And remember that fun fuels creativity. Playfulness, laughter, and spontaneity are not distractions, they're design accelerators. Asynchronous collaboration is a hidden superpower. Remote work offers something traditional design thinking rarely does: the ability to work together separately. Asynchronous collaboration lets people contribute on their own time, ideal for global teams, time zone gaps, or people who think best in solitude. Use it to collect insights from customer interviews, have team members add sticky notes to boards over a few days, share and comment on prototypes before live testing, and reflect on key learnings in shared docs. Blending synchronous and asynchronous modes leads to deeper engagement and more inclusive outcomes. Design thinking doesn't just survive in remote environments, it evolves. When adapted well, it becomes more accessible, more flexible, and often more human. Geography is no longer a constraint, creativity is no longer confined to the office, and teams can learn how to collaborate with intention no matter where they are. Next, we'll see how organizations of all types across sectors and scales are putting these principles into action. I've got a long list of real case studies to bring the process to life and show you what's possible when design thinking moves from theory to impact. For our next reflection prompt, what's one part of your collaboration process that could be made more inclusive or dynamic by using design thinking remotely? Reflect on the following. Where do you lose energy in virtual work, and how might you redesign that moment? What's one low risk way to prototype remote collaboration next week? Let's talk about some case studies. You've explored the mindsets, mastered the process, and seen how design thinking adapts to business and remote environments. Now it's time to see it in action. This episode will highlight real world case studies that bring design thinking to life across sectors, showing not just the results, but the journey, the pivots, and the messy middle that makes the process real. These stories offer a window into how professionals apply design thinking to solve through problems in healthcare, education, government, and the private sector. No two projects look the same, but the core principles remain: empathy, iteration, creativity, and collaboration. In healthcare, we've got an example of rethinking the waiting room experience. The challenge is that a major urban hospital in North America was receiving consistent complaints about long wait times in the emergency department. Leadership initially assumed that this was a staffing issue, but data showed that patient dissatisfaction peaked not during triage, but after check in, during the period when patients were left in the waiting room with no updates. A small cross functional team, including a nurse, a patient liaison, and a facilities planner, used design thinking to understand the root cause of the issue. They shadowed patients, interviewed staff, and even sat in the waiting room anonymously for hours. What they found was not just frustration with time, but with uncertainty. Patients didn't know how long they'd be waiting, what was happening behind the scenes, or whether they'd been forgotten. The team reframed the problem from how do we reduce wait times to how might we reduce the anxiety and uncertainty patients feel during waiting. Dozens of ideas emerged, some practical, some unconventional. Ideas included color coded wristbands, digital cue boards, and even a waiting room concierge. A low fidelity prototype was implemented over a weekend using a whiteboard and hourly status updates provided by volunteers. Feedback showed a significant drop in stress levels, even though wait times remained the same. The result was that the hospital eventually rolled out a digital dashboard and small communication coaching sessions for intake staff. Patient satisfaction scores rose by 22%, not because patients were seen faster, but because they felt seen. In education, we have an example where we've co-designed student mental health services. The challenge is that a mid-sized Canadian university was seeing a rise in mental health service usage, but high drop-off after initial contact. Students weren't returning for follow-up, and campus wellness staff weren't sure why. The student affairs team partnered with design facilitators to bring students into the process. Through confidential interviews and diary studies, students shared their experiences of anxiety around stigma, poor wayfinding, and inconsistent expectations about what mental health support meant. The team crafted a new problem statement. How might we create a support journey that feels clear, safe, and student led? Students, staff, and a peer support worker brainstormed ideas in mixed groups. The most promising included digital intake forms that allowed students to set preferences, clear signage, and drop in mental wellness corners outside the counseling office. The team built a clickable intake form and hosted pop up counseling days in visible campus locations to test the stigma factor. The result was that the new process increased return appointments by 40% and gave students a greater sense of ownership. Just as important, it reframed mental health as a shared campus culture, not just a crisis service. For a government example, simplifying permit applications for small businesses. The challenge was that a local municipal government wanted to support small business growth, but the business license application process was confusing, paper based, and scattered across multiple departments. Rather than defaulting to a digital form redesign, the innovation team decided to understand the user experience from the ground up. The staff followed business owners through the process, documenting every interaction and form. They found that the real problem wasn't just paperwork, it was a lack of guidance. Entrepreneurs were unsure where to start and often gave up mid process. How might we make opening a business feel like a guided journey, not a bureaucratic maze, is how they define the problem. And ideas range from interactive checklists to startup coaches to bundled applications with pre filled fields. The team mocked up a single entry digital portal with step by step wizard. They also ran a live concierge day at City Hall to simulate an in person support. A beta version of the portal launched within 6 weeks. Time to application completion dropped by 60%. More significantly, entrepreneurs reported feeling encouraged rather than intimidated. The team later used the same approach to simplify building permits. An example from the private sector includes reinventing the onboarding experience at a tech startup. A fast growing software company realized that new hires were struggling to acclimate. Despite a detailed onboarding checklist and assigned mentors, employees reported feeling disconnected and uncertain about their role in the first 90 days. HR and product teams joined forces to apply design thinking to employee experience. They interviewed recent hires and shadowed their onboarding journey. What they heard was unexpected. The issue wasn't a lack of information, but a lack of belonging. Many didn't feel seen or supported outside their functional team. How might we create an onboarding experience that helps new employees feel seen, confident, and connected from day one? Brainstorming sessions yielded ideas like welcome narratives, peer led onboarding circles, day one rituals, and personal onboarding maps. One small team piloted a new onboarding format where each new hire created a user manual about how they work best and matched with a buddy based on complementary work styles. The result was employee engagement scores improved significantly within the first 30 days. Turnover among new hires dropped. The onboarding approach eventually became a key part of the company employer brand. Some common threads have emerged across sectors. While each case took place in a different sector, a few shared patterns emerged. Empathy changed the problem definition. In every case, the real issue was different from the one originally assumed. Cross functional teams unlocked insight. Innovation didn't come from one role or department, it came from a diverse perspective, collaborating. Prototyping was fast and scrappy. None of these teams waited for perfect conditions. They tested early and refined as they went. Results were both functional and emotional. Success wasn't only about efficiency, it was about clarity, confidence, and connection and trust. These case studies show what's possible when people are empowered to rethink old problems through a new lens. Design thinking isn't just a toolkit, it's a way of shifting how organizations learn, adapt, and build things that matter. Next, we'll explore how to take your design thinking practice further by developing your own skills, embedding design thinking in your daily work, and designing ethically and inclusively. For this reflection prompt, which of these stories most resonates with your own context and why? Take a moment to jot down what challenge in your work might benefit from a similar approach. Who could you bring together to try it? Cultivating your design thinking skills, making design thinking a personal habit. Design thinking is often introduced as a team sport, something you do in workshops, cross-functional projects, or innovation sprints. But the most powerful and enduring change happens when it becomes a personal discipline, a way you think, observe, experiment, and grow in your day to day work. In this episode, we'll explore how you can cultivate design thinking as an ongoing practice, not just something you use when a problem lands on your desk, but something you carry with you into conversations, meetings, decisions, and moments of ambiguity. Whether you're a leader, an analyst, a teacher, a technologist, or something in between, design thinking can sharpen your instincts and expand your creative capacity. You don't need a big initiative to apply design thinking. You just need to notice where problems exist and choose to explore them with empathy, curiosity, and experimentation. Design thinking shows up in everyday ways like choosing to observe quietly before jumping in with solutions, asking someone, "What's frustrating you about this process?" Sketching out a rough idea to spark conversation instead of writing a long email, turning a failed initiative into a learning session, not a postmortem. Taking 5 minutes after a meeting to reflect, what problem were we really trying to solve? The more you look, the more you'll see opportunities to design better outcomes, conversations, documents, experiences, policies, interactions. Every time you pause to think, who is this for and how might they feel? You're practicing design thinking. Design thinking is as much about improving how you work as what you create. You can apply it to design your own habits, priorities, and productivity. Try it. Empathize with yourself. What gives you energy in your work? What drains it? Define the challenge. Is it a time issue, a focus issue, a communication bottleneck? Ideate ways to improve. Could you try time blocking, reduce meetings, add rituals that signal focus or transition? Prototype a new routine. Test a new work rhythm for 1 week. Notice what changes. Reflect and adjust. What helped? What didn't? What's worth keeping? By treating your own professional experiences as something worth designing, you become more intentional, resilient problem solver. Build your own toolkit. As you grow your design thinking practice, it helps to build a personal toolkit, not just of methods and templates, but of mindsets and muscle memory. So here's how to do that. One, choose one practice to deepen. Start with a part of the process you enjoy or want to master. Maybe it's conducting empathy interviews or framing problems with better how might we questions or running low fidelity experiments. Then go deeper. Read case studies or watch videos on others how to do it well. Run a small solo experiment to test your technique. Debrief with yourself after. What did I learn about the method and about myself? Two, curate your go to tools. Rather than relying on templates or complex playbooks, create a short list of tools you love and trust. This might include a favorite brainstorming format, a lightweight prototype tool, a set of open ended empathy questions, a method for capturing feedback in real time. Having a grab and go set of tools increases confidence and reduces resistance when you want to act on an idea. Three, reflect often and openly. Reflection is the soil where design thinking takes root. After a project, meeting, or session, ask, what surprised me? What would I do differently next time? Where did I default to control instead of curiosity? Keep a journal, voice note, or short weekly recap. Design thinkers don't just do the work, they learn from what they do and how they do it. Learning beyond the workshop. Workshops are a great way to kickstart design thinking, but if that's where your practice ends, it risks becoming performative. Real growth happens between the sessions when you apply design thinking to problems that don't come with sticky notes, whiteboards, or facilitators. Some ways to keep learning include shadowing others who use design thinking in different contexts, service design, policy, community engagement, software. Join design reviews or idea critiques, not just to give input, but to observe how people frame and challenge each other's thinking. Start a learning circle with a few colleagues to share experiments, failures, and lessons learned. Teach a tool to someone else. Nothing deepens your understanding like trying to explain it. Over time, design thinking becomes less about the steps and more about how you show up. It's a question asker, an assumption tester, and a builder of better systems. It's easy to treat design thinking as just another skill on your resume, but the most powerful practitioners don't just use design thinking, they embody it. They're comfortable not having all the answers. They get excited about hard problems. They listen more than they talk. They move ideas forward with momentum, not perfection. They care about people deeply. You don't need a formal title, design degree, or workshop certification to do this work well. You just need a consistent willingness to try, learn, and lead by example. You've come a long way from learning the foundations to practicing the process to applying design thinking in teams and real world settings. Next, we'll explore something equally important: how to ensure your design thinking practice is not just effective, but ethical, inclusive, and responsible. Because creativity without a conscience can do harm, and design at its best is an act of care. For the next reflection prompt, how do you currently apply design thinking, even if you don't call it that? Turn these actions and try to do more of the following. Where do you pause to observe before acting? Where could you bring more intention, empathy, or experimentation into your daily work? Full and inclusive design thinking, designing for more than function. It is a powerful approach for problem solving and creating new possibilities. But like any other tool, its impact depends on how and for whom it is used. When done carelessly, design thinking can reinforce bias, exclude marginalized voices, and produce solutions that serve the powerful rather than the vulnerable. When done intentionally, it can change the status quo, elevate unheard perspectives, and contribute to systems that are more than just humane and sustainable. This section will explore what it means to design ethically and inclusively, but not as a separate practice, but as a core responsibility of every design thinker. Why ethics matters in design. Design is not neutral. Every choice, what to prioritize, who to involve, which problem to solve, reflects values, assumptions, and trade offs. Whether you're designing a digital tool, a service workflow, or a strategic process, you're shaping how people experience the world. Ignoring ethics doesn't remove that impact, it just makes it invisible. Consider a health app that excludes non English speakers, an onboarding process that unintentionally marginalizes neurodiverse employees, public service forum that's inaccessible to people with visual impairments, customer feedback process that rewards only those comfortable speaking up. None of these examples are malicious, but all of them are avoidable with more intentional design. Design thinkers must learn to see beyond utility and innovation. We must ask who benefits, who might be harmed, and who is missing from the room. Expanding the circle of inclusion. Inclusivity in design is more than diversity of participants, it's about equity of voice, access, and influence. Start by asking who are we designing for and who else is affected? Have we involved people with lived experience of the problem? Are we valuing different ways of knowing, not just verbal or analytical? Inclusion also means designing environments where people feel safe to share their truth. That might require culturally sensitive facilitation, accessible language and materials, trauma informed practices, slower timelines to build trust. Importantly, inclusion isn't a checkbox, it's an orientation, one that continues throughout the entire design process, from framing the problem to implementing the solution. Recognizing and mitigating bias. Bias can enter the design process at any point, often unconsciously. We assume certain user behaviors are normal. We interpret feedback based through our own lenses. We define success by what we would value. Some common forms of bias in design thinking include confirmation bias, that is, seeking insights that support our own assumptions. Affinity bias is prioritizing ideas from people who seem like us. Availability bias is overemphasizing easily recalled experiences or anecdotes. So if it happened yesterday, it's more recent than something that, say, happened a year ago. Survivorship bias is learning only from those who made it through a flawed system. Designers must learn how to spot and slow down these patterns. Some strategies could include inviting dissenting perspectives in workshops, making your assumptions explicit and testing them, using frameworks like equity-centered design or the CLEAR model, which is consideration, listening, empathy, accountability, and reflection. Bias isn't something to eliminate once and for all, it's something to continuously surface and question. Designing for sustainability and long-term impact. Ethical design also means thinking beyond the moment toward the longer arc of impact. That means asking, will this solution still be helpful in 5 years? What unintended consequences could emerge? Are we designing for convenience or for care? In fast-paced organizations, this kind of thinking can feel like a luxury, but it's a necessity, especially in systems that affect vulnerable populations, the environment, or public trust. Sustainable design practices include prioritizing repair over replacement, supporting behavior change, not just product adoption, using data responsibly and transparently, centering intergenerational impact in decision making. Being ethical doesn't mean being perfect, it means committing to foresight, accountability, and humility. Ethics is a team practice. You don't have to carry the weight of ethical design alone. In fact, you shouldn't. The best ethical design practices are social, not solo. They live in dialogue, reflection, and shared responsibility. Make ethics part of the process by starting each project with an ethics-based check-in. What tensions or risks do we anticipate? Build in roles for equity advisors or community representatives. Reflect regularly on what trade-offs you're making and who's impacted. Debrief not just outcomes, but integrity. Did we act in alignment with our values? This is especially important in design thinking where speed and iteration are valued. Ethical reflection must be designed into the pace and not delayed until the end. When you get it wrong, even with the best of intentions, mistakes happen. You build something that unintentionally excludes. You might test an idea that lands poorly. You might miss a perspective you later realize was essential. When that happens, own it, listen, and adapt. Ethical design isn't about never messing up. It's about being open to correction and committing to repair. The people you're designing for don't expect perfection. They expect respect, honesty, and responsiveness. Design thinking gives us the tool to listen deeply, test gently, and change course quickly. Use them. Ethical and inclusive design thinking don't slow innovation, it strengthens it. It creates solutions that are more robust, more resilient, and more trusted. It ensures that creativity serves not just cleverness, but consequence. In the last series episode, we'll explore how to make design thinking stick, how to embed the work into your team, your organization, your own leadership style, so it becomes not just what you do, but how you think. And for this reflection prompt, what assumptions do you regularly bring into your work and how might they be shaping your decisions? Take a moment to make some notes. Who do you design for most often and who is left out? How could you slow down the process just enough to surface bias and invite more voices? Next steps, making it stick, turning design thinking into a way of working. So you've reached the last episode. By now, you've explored the foundations of design thinking, practiced it in stages, learned how to apply it across sectors, and reflected on ethical and inclusive design. But perhaps the more important question remains. Now what? What happens after this ends, after the workshop ends, after the sticky notes are taken down, and after the prototype is shelved? How do you keep the spirit and substance of design thinking alive when day-to-day pressures take over? Final phase isn't part of the official process, but it's the one that determines whether design thinking becomes a passing tactic or a lasting capability. This one will focus on how to sustain design thinking over time as an individual, a team, and an organization. Embed, don't bolt on. Design thinking isn't meant to live in a side room. Too often, organizations treat it as something special, a tool for innovation teams or annual retreats. But to have real impact, it needs to be woven into your core processes and conversations. Where do we already make decisions about people, services, or systems? Where do we rely on assumptions rather than insight? Where could a little more empathy, creativity, or experimentation improve outcomes? Design thinking doesn't have to be a formal session. It can show up in your hiring practices, meeting agendas, performance reviews, budgeting conversations, or strategic planning. The goal isn't to do more work, it's to do existing work differently. Start small, stay consistent. Sustainable change rarely comes from grand gestures. It comes from small, repeated choices that accumulate over time. You don't need to redesign your entire organization. You just need to start where you are and what you can influence. Try adding a 10-minute empathy check to your team meetings. What are we hearing from users or stakeholders? Reframe one problem a week as a how might we question. Run a 60-minute ideation sprint instead of another status meeting. Prototyping is a process change before making it permanent. These aren't huge shifts, but they might signal a new mindset. They normalize learning, invite contribution, and build creative confidence. Design your own experiments. One of the most powerful ways to make design thinking stick is to treat it like a design challenge itself. Instead of trying to implement it all at once, start with experiments. Ask, what's one process we could redesign using design thinking this quarter? How might we improve team collaboration with a new approach to meetings? What if we prototyped a new onboarding or feedback method? Define a learning goal, run a test, gather feedback, and iterate. Share your results with others. The more your colleagues see design thinking in action, the more likely they are to join you. Build rituals, not just skills. If tools are the hands of design thinking, rituals are its heartbeat. They're what's keeping the practice alive even when projects get messy or schedules get tight. Consider a failure share at the end of each project. Focus on what was learned. A monthly field report where team members share user stories. A visual tracker of design thinking practices across initiatives. Reflection prompts at key decision points. How we talk to the right people? Are we solving the right problem? Rituals don't require permission or budget. They just need intention and a little consistency. Lead by example. If you're in a position of influence, formally or informally, you have a unique opportunity to model design thinking and how you lead. That means asking more questions than you answer, welcoming feedback, especially when it challenges your view, celebrating learning over certainty, inviting people into the process, not just the solution. You don't need to be the expert. In fact, it's better if you're not. The best leaders create space for others to experiment, explore, and grow. Anticipate resistance and redesign it. Change is rarely embraced without friction. You may hear things like, we don't have time for that. This is how we've always done it. It feels too vague or touchy feely. That's not how real decisions get made here. These are signals, not stop signs. Instead of pushing back, get curious. What's the fear underneath the resistance? How might you reframe the process in a way that fits the local context? Could you show, not tell, by prototyping a faster, more focused version? Design thinking teaches us to meet problems with empathy and creativity. Apply the same approach to your change efforts. Connect to a community. One of the best ways to sustain your practice is to stay connected to others who are doing the same. This could be a design thinking guild, a monthly meetup, a Reddit channel, Slack group, or an informal coffee chat with a few curious peers. Design thinking can be lonely if you're the only one doing it, but it doesn't have to be. Chances are someone else in your organization or network is also trying to make change from the inside. Find each other, share stories, trade tools, celebrate small wins. Together, you'll go further. We might be at the end of our video series, but your journey as a design thinker is just beginning. Design thinking is not a set of perfect steps. It's a way of navigating complexity with clarity, curiosity, and care. Some days you'll use the full process. Other days you'll simply ask a better question or slow down to listen more deeply. Every time you do, you make space for better outcomes for yourself, your team, and the people you serve. So start where you are, stay open, stay experimental, and above all, keep designing forward. And in our last reflection prompt, what's one design thinking habit, practice, or mindset you're committed to keeping alive after this? Create an action plan. Where will you start? Who can support you? How will you know it's working?